live interview series at the Global Conference on Agricultural Research for Development in Johannesburg, South Africa. My name is Georgina Smith, and I'm the Communications Coordinator for the Centre for Tropical Agricultural Research based in Nairobi. And I'm joined by CIAT's Director General, Dr. Ruben Echeverri. So can you introduce yourself and tell us something about CIAT's priority areas of research?
Sure, it's a pleasure to be here. We are having a great global conference. This is the third global conference, which is the opportunity for all of us to mix and mingle and see what's going on, how we can tackle these challenges together. So the International Center for Tropical Agriculture, CIAT, is based in Nairobi, Kenya, in Hanoi, Vietnam, and in Cali, Colombia. And we are working basically in food security and climate change areas. We are trying to do very adaptive research for development on the ground.
So one of the key issues at GCARD that we've been hearing about is scaling up. So what are some of the challenges in Africa with regard to scaling up technologies? And can you give us an example of the way that CIAT is addressing this?
Well, all of us in the scientific and the research community are always wanted to scale up to have more impact, to really get the targets of, for example, the CGIAR target of 100 million people out of poverty, of CIAT target by 2030 to have at least 10 million people with higher incomes. Now, to do that, you need to scale up, which means go beyond the research plot, go beyond the farm, and get into the region, the countries, and the big continents like Africa. The bad news on that front is that to scale up in agriculture, agriculture is location specific. A farm here is different from a farm right there across the road. So the big challenge is how to think on scaling up for big impact, but at the same time don't lose the connection with the location specificity of agriculture. Even in one little farm, it rains different, depends on which corner of the farm you are. So that's a big challenge for the research community overall.
Another area of interest is how do we demonstrate impact, especially when it comes to research. So how is CIAT addressing that?
Well, one way of addressing that is to be sure that the research that we are doing is not only the supply of science, of knowledge, but to make sure that we are listening to the demand of what's needed. And one of the best examples is our work on common bean in Rwanda, where Rwanda is a very small country with a population of less than 15 million people, but it's going to be more than 40 million soon, in a few decades. So by working on beans, on farms, on high iron nutrition beans, high yielding beans in small plots, we thought that that's a good combination of improving nutrition, improving family income, improving the soil, because these are legumes, and scaling up our research out of the plots. So most of the time we do research on farm, and that's another way of scaling up. Neighbors, checking what they do with other neighbors, pick up technology much faster than if a researcher comes and tells them, we found this new magic solution.
So one of the other themes that we've been hearing about a lot at GCARD is climate change and the challenge that climate change faces. What is CIAT doing on this area of research?
We are really involved. We have about half of our staff working on climate change. We are leading the global climate change, agriculture, and food security program in the CGIAR, together with all CGIAR centers and many, many partners outside the CGIAR. And what we are doing is trying to come up from the long-run scenarios of what's going to happen in 100 years or in 50 years. You and I are not going to be here in 50 or 100 years. So what we're doing is saying, what's going to happen in the next 6 months? Should I really plant rice now, or should I wait 2 or 3 weeks? So that agrometeorological prognosis or scenario helps a lot real farming communities. So we are trying to adapt and to translate all of this scientific literature into something practical for the people on the ground. So one key challenge that we face is that with climate change, what really is going to happen, that the growing period of crops will be perhaps 20% shorter, which means we need to develop new crop varieties to yield more to sustain climate variability, which is different from climate change, and at the same time grow much faster in 20% less time, like beans in Africa. That's another example. So that's how we are investing most of the great funding that we can secure from good donors that we thank them on doing that. That's very concrete, and I think it will create great impacts.
So another challenge or area of interest in the conference is on sustaining the business of farming. How do we engage youth and women in agriculture to ensure that it is sustained?
The only way, I think, it may sound simplistic, but the only way is to make agriculture and rural development in general a business, to really make a business. It's not a mission. For us, it's a mission in my generation. But in reality, in the new generation, it has to be a business. So, and there's no development without companies. It's not enough to have research or roads or health or education. You need private companies. So what we are doing is trying to link, for example, with the seed companies. Even if we produce these fantastic research, new varieties, who is going to produce the seeds of high quality, at low price, that farmers will buy to improve their crops and their livelihoods? So what we are engaging is trying to connect much better with small and medium-sized seed companies and getting the youth involved there. Usually, women are running the show, as we say, in farms because they know much about nutrition than males. They are usually buying those seeds, so the youth and the females in the communities are having a much higher role than in the past. In this aspect. So we are bringing the companies much closer together than in the past.
Okay, so that entails working with the private sector more closely.
Exactly. These companies are all private. This is the private sector engaging, and we emphasize, as we work with the smallholders, we emphasize also the small and medium-sized seeds companies. So we have no work with the big ones. There's nothing wrong with the big companies, but we are trying to also promote the small and medium-sized companies, which at the same time will be able to hire these rural youth, and that will be a win-win for us.
So looking forward, how do we ensure environmental sustainability while at the same time increasing the amount of food that's produced, especially with the growing populations?
Well, that's your questions are getting tougher and tougher. This is a tough question that we're all trying to solve, because it has never been solved. Humankind has never had so many people with less land, less water, more climate variability, wars, volatility here and there. So that's the challenge. And the only way out, of course, is to invest more in research. Research has been a huge global underinvestment in research. Not research only in the CGIAR, I mean in general. Research for humanity, for food security, for climate. So what we're trying to do, if there are crops in the future who can yield more using less water, those are the crops that we want to build into the future. If we invest in the right priorities for those crops that are important for poorer people, lower income, then we are going to be better off. So we are trying to combine the two in every research project that we are undertaking at CIAT, for instance.
Thank you very much for your time, Dr. Echeverri.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thank you.